What's up everyone? In this video, I wanted to talk about social intelligence. So I'm reading this awesome book called Mastery by Robert Greene. And basically in the book, it talks about social intelligence in a way that I never really thought about it. And because I'm not that great at it, I wanted to share with you some tips on it, why it's important, and how you can get better at it. See, social intelligence is one of those things that you can get better at, unlike IQ, which is kind of fixed. And it's kind of like if you a certain level of smart, you can't get more smart in terms of just pure IQ. Social intelligence you can. So what exactly is social intelligence to begin with? Basically, social intelligence is the understanding and knowledge to be able to navigate social situations in a way that is best suited for pretty much everyone around you, so that you understand them and you can coordinate things better in social situations. So I always knew about this, but I never really thought much of it. And it wasn't until I started reading this book that I really understood the importance of it. There's this great story in this book that I really wanted to share with you. Here's how it basically goes. There's two doctors. These are real stories, by the way. There's two doctors, and one of these doctors, he was responsible for discovering that bacteria, if you don't clean your hands, it sticks on your hands and it transfers to other people you touch. Back in the day, people didn't know that. So what exactly occurred? Well, basically, he found this out. He realized that the hospitals were killing hundreds of people because the doctors weren't washing their hands between examining dead bodies and then going to their next surgery. So he started sounding the alarm and doing all this stuff. However, he had no idea what social intelligence was, nor did he even think to be socially intelligent. And long story short, he died homeless, broke, and the whole doctoral world scorned him. Why? Because his boss really couldn't cope with the fact that he had killed so many people. So instead, he was like, "You're lying, this isn't true." And his boss had a bit of an ego too. And he really just approached things in a really unstrategic way. And he was like what most engineers or mathematicians are, which is basically someone who is very mathematical and not really thinking about anything other than the numbers. He was someone who's just like, oh, the numbers are the numbers, and that's how it is. And the numbers are something that doesn't always prove to be enough. Sometimes humans, which you think are very logical creatures, are actually very emotional, biased, psychological creatures who make very illogical decisions sometimes. And so even though the evidence, and he did compile a ton of evidence to prove this, it just didn't matter. It just didn't work out. These people were just too, filled up with their own preconceived notions to believe something else. On the other side, there's a second story of a doctor. Again, this is a real story as well, detailed in this book, Mastery. And long story short, what it showed you was the power of social intelligence. So this guy had something to prove as well. And this time he was successful. So what did he have to prove? That's not really as important, but it was a big discovery. Basically that the blood in our bodies is something that's cycled through rather than something that is constantly being used and consumed. It's something that keeps cycling through and is recycled. And so this was a very contradictory, controversial theory, similar to what I just described and similar to bringing about natural selection or evolution into the world, which was beforehand very engrossed in religion and their own preconceived notions and biases. So long story short, what this guy did was he was very smart. Once he discovered this, he didn't release it. He spent another, a good several years building up more evidence, more and more evidence. Then he won a lot of allegiances, loyalty amongst some of the most high-level authorities in politics. He developed an incredible friendship with the king of the land. And when he finally released his findings, he devoted a whole chapter to dedicating this to the king. And he even described it in a way where it was literally like, the blood that circles through our body is similar to how the king rules the land. The king is a precious, amazing person who is the center of the kingdom and essential to it, similar to how the heart in our body is essential to the governing of all our functions. So long story short, he described it in such an ornate way that he pretty much buttered up the king, and therefore the king, he was more likely to accept what was being said. So here's the point, long story short. You have to be a bit smarter. You can't just be like, hey, this is how things are, like it or leave it. Otherwise, you get your head chopped off, you die, you get thrown in jail. And that's why social intelligence developed over the years. There are modern examples of very socially intelligent people. One of them is Arianna Huffington. So she is a very well-known networker, and she is actually someone who is the editor-in-chief of the Huffington Post. Now, about a couple years ago, she met with the founder of Uber, and his name's Travis, and they had lunch together, and basically during this, it was a dinner, it wasn't a lunch. During this dinner, they were there amongst a bunch of friends. Now, Travis, when he had a little bit of time, he pulled Arianna aside and he said, hey, when we have time, I want to discuss something important. Now, Arianna, being the socially intelligent person she was, she decided, we're already here together at lunch. He clearly has something important to tell me. Why isn't he telling me this here? So rather than do this stupid or unintelligent social thing to do, which would be to just say, well, why can't you tell us here? I mean, I have time right now. We're here amongst friends. She knew that the reason Travis was saying this was because it was something probably a little delicate and private, and therefore he wanted his private attention. So long story short, she was smart enough to do the thing that was truly logical and factor in variables that a more mathematical or highly just math or numbers based person wouldn't consider to factor in to truly get the most efficient and socially conscious decision. And so they ended up meeting later and discussing about Uber, and it really helped advance that company. So I'm not here to tell you all this like I'm an expert. Quite frankly, I'm not that great at any of this. And that is why I was so excited about this, because I think this is something that can be improved, will be improved, and very helpful to your success in life. Whether you're in school or you're working in a company, the truth is that sometimes things aren't just like cut and dry. Like sometimes people aren't willing to be able to put aside your biases. Ultimately, you want to move towards a company or organization who are just so smart and humble and willing to, put aside any biases or ego to do the right thing or question their own hypothesis and maybe be able to admit that they're wrong. But until then, you will meet people in your company or wherever you're doing work that are just not that great in terms of dealing with others. They have their own pride and ego. They're ingrained in their own ways of doing things, even if they're not that effective anymore. And rather than being a baby about it and crying about it and saying, this sucks, or, arguing with them, consider what's the socially intelligent thing to do. Perhaps there's another way around of convincing this guy without pissing him off and getting him to completely ruin me. So think it through. This is definitely still in play. And of course, nowadays with all this technology and knowledge base and books, you have people like me who make videos to help you. But before then, the socially intelligent people were just the ones who stumbled across it or were naturally aware of it to begin with. So I think this could really help you. Thanks so much for watching. And of course, I hope you enjoyed this beautiful view. That's why I kind of went out and did it instead of just in my own, typical setting. See you in the next video. Of course, if you're new to this channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.